The air is thin and bitterly cold, howling across the cracked surface of the planet. Jagged rocks stretch endlessly in every direction, and the sky, perpetually dark, is obscured by swirling dust storms. The planet, devoid of life, is as much a tomb as a final resting place. The monk, seated cross-legged on a small plateau, has already accepted that this will be their end. Their breathing is shallow, deliberate. Each exhale is a quiet surrender to the void. In their weakened state, the alien monk contemplates the journey that led them here. Their kind, a peaceful order of spiritual seekers, revered for millennia, had been their life's purpose. They were taught that everything, from the stars to the dust beneath their feet, was interconnected. Yet, their teachings were clear: once one strayed from the sacred path, exile was the only mercy. The monk remembers the moment of accusation vividly. A false charge, they knew it, but the council of elders had not cared. They had accused the monk of questioning the infallibility of their sacred texts, of teaching an alternative path to transcendence. The elders feared that such ideas, if spread, would disrupt the delicate order of their society. Out of fear, they chose to silence the monk, casting them out, abandoning them to die on this remote, forsaken world. The monk had thought their people, bound by spiritual law, would understand. Instead, they had turned their backs. Even the other species, once respectful of the monk's wisdom, had rejected any calls for aid. The monk's fall from grace had tainted their reputation, and in the cold vastness of the galaxy, no one wished to risk association. They were truly alone. Their eyes, though closed, still see the endless horizon of this barren place. They are drifting in and out of consciousness, their body failing. But internally, they remain calm. Acceptance of fate is the highest virtue among their kind. Every lesson they had ever taught, every meditation they had guided, now rested heavy in their mind. This was their destiny, they believed, no matter how unjust, no matter the betrayal. The stars had ordained it. Still, as the cold begins to creep deeper into their bones, a tiny doubt stirs. Was this truly their fate? Was this the way their journey was meant to end? There is a quiet voice, faint but persistent, whispering that perhaps there is more, that perhaps death doesn't have to be so near. The monk breathes deeply, pushing the thought aside. Clinging to life now would only delay the inevitable. Better to let go. They shift slightly, preparing for the final meditation. Once their mind is fully focused, they will disconnect from the physical body and transcend the suffering. Or so they had been taught. The silence of the planet presses down on them, until the monk, in their heightened state, senses something different. Something that shouldn't be there. A pulse, faint but clear. Life. Movement. Their mind, sharp as it has always been, catches the presence, small, distant, but real. It feels strange, almost human, but the monk dismisses it. They had encountered human expeditions before, curious, short-lived beings, but no one would be here now. It must be an illusion, their dying mind conjuring one last distraction. But the sensation doesn't fade. Instead, it grows stronger, more insistent. Through the fog of their failing body, the monk's instincts awaken. There is someone near, approaching. The human ship descends through the swirling dust storms, scanners picking up unusual energy readings from the surface. Captain Renard, leading the mission, is intrigued but cautious. They weren't expecting to find anything here, just another barren rock in an uncharted system. But something had caught their sensors, and curiosity had pulled them down. Beside him, Dr. Marlowe, the science officer, monitors the instruments, their focus on the strange, erratic energy signals coming from a nearby plateau. As they land, the planet's inhospitable environment becomes immediately clear. The desolation, the biting wind, the absence of any life. Renard orders a sweep of the area, though none of the crew expects to find anything beyond geological data. Then, something appears on their handheld scanners, a faint life signature, almost buried in the static. It's weak, barely registering, but unmistakable. They move quickly, tracing the source through the jagged landscape, until they come upon the monk. The scene stops them in their tracks. Slumped over, the alien monk sits motionless, their breathing shallow. Their body, thin and frail, is wrapped in worn robes that barely protect them from the harsh conditions. The crew exchanges glances. What is this being doing out here, alone on a planet like this? But the captain doesn't hesitate. Get a medkit, he orders, the urgency clear. Protocol would suggest avoiding involvement. This isn't their fight, their responsibility. But these are humans, and humans don't walk away when someone is suffering. Marlowe scans the monk, frowning at the results. They're on the verge of death, she says, already pulling out emergency supplies. We have to move fast. Renard considers the risks. They don't know this species, don't know what they're walking into. But the decision is made in an instant. Do what you can, he says firmly. The others nod, and soon they're working together, stabilizing the monk with oxygen, nutrients, and field medical care. They lift the unconscious figure gently and carry them back to the ship, where they can give more advanced treatment. As they work, questions buzz in their minds. Who is this being? Why were they left here? There's no sign of a crash, no distress signal, just silence and emptiness. Renard doesn't voice his concerns aloud, but they weigh on him. He's seen too many battles, too many conflicts where people get left behind. He can't help but wonder if that's what happened here. Hours later, the monk stirs, their eyes fluttering open. Their first sight is the sterile interior of the human ship, the soft hum of machines keeping them alive. Instinctively, they tense, expecting to see indifference, perhaps even hostility. That's what they had come to expect from other species, curiosity that fades into apathy. But what greets them is entirely different. Marlowe is by their side, checking vitals with the precision of a seasoned physician. She notices the monk's awareness and speaks softly, reassuring them that they are safe. Her voice, though foreign, is kind, and the monk, still disoriented, struggles to understand. Why would these beings, humans, help them? Renard enters, offering a small nod. You're okay, he says. We found you on the surface. You're going to be all right now. The monk's mind races, trying to reconcile the facts. Their own people had abandoned them. No one had come to their aid. Why would these humans, a species known for its aggression, its thirst for expansion, bother with a lone exile? Caution lingers in the monk's thoughts, but their body is too weak to resist. They need the care, the sustenance being offered, so they take it. Over the next few hours, the humans remain attentive, patient, speaking to the monk in soothing tones. They ask no questions about who the monk is or why they were here, though curiosity clearly simmers beneath the surface. They focus only on recovery, which confounds the monk even more. Marlowe, ever the scientist, can't hide her fascination. I've studied dozens of alien cultures, she says at one point, breaking the silence. But I've never seen anything like your kind. Your physiology, your robes, they suggest something ancient, something wise. What brought you out here? The monk hesitates, unsure of how to respond. Their first instinct is to shield the truth, but the humans seem genuine. They decide on half-truths, describing themselves as a wanderer, left behind by their people. They don't elaborate on the exile, on the accusations, but the humans don't press. It's enough for now. Meanwhile, Renard watches from the background, quietly assessing the situation. He's not just a captain, he's a man who's seen the worst of the galaxy. The wars, the betrayals, the coldness of species who see life as disposable. Yet, here is this strange, serene figure, clearly not a threat, and they've been abandoned, left to die. It doesn't sit right with him. Who would leave you behind? He asks eventually, not out of suspicion, but empathy. Whoever they are, they're not worth your loyalty. The monk, caught off guard by the bluntness, doesn't answer right away. It's not the question itself that stuns them, it's the warmth behind it. The captain's words echo in their mind, clashing with everything they had been taught about humans. They had expected arrogance, selfishness, perhaps even mockery. But instead, there is kindness, concern, something unshakably genuine. They begin to wonder, for the first time, if perhaps they had been wrong. If everything they had believed about humanity, their chaos, their violence, wasn't the full story. These humans had no reason to help them, no obligation. Yet here they were, giving without asking for anything in return. As their strength slowly returns, the monk considers the possibility that their exile, their fate, isn't as final as they once believed. They had been prepared to die on that desolate world, to accept the judgment of their people. But now, a sliver of hope flickers in their heart. Maybe, just maybe, there is more to this journey than they had been led to believe. With newfound resolve, they agree to stay with the humans for a while longer. Not because they need more time to heal, but because they're beginning to suspect that these humans might offer something far more valuable than mere survival. As the human ship moves through the void of space, the monk finds themselves slowly recovering, both physically and mentally. Days pass, and with each moment spent aboard, the alien monk learns more about the humans who had saved them. Despite the apparent disorder and noise of their lives, the humans are different. They laugh loudly, argue with passion, and yet, beneath the surface, there is an unshakable bond of loyalty that seems to define their every action. In quiet moments, the monk observes them. There's an energy about humans, something raw and untamed. Their lives seem chaotic compared to the structured serenity of the monk's order. Where the monk's people had always sought stillness, the humans embraced movement. They sought challenge. They thrived in adversity. It was almost impossible for the monk to reconcile these opposing forces, but somehow, within this chaos, the humans found strength. The crew begins to include the monk in their conversations. It starts with simple exchanges, questions about their culture, their homeworld, their past. One evening, sitting in the mess hall, Dr. Marlowe asks about the monk's beliefs. What was it like, living in a society that values peace above all else? No wars, no conflict. It sounds like a dream. The monk, still cautious but growing more open, speaks softly. We believe that all life is interconnected. To harm another is to harm oneself. Our order taught us that through peace, meditation, and understanding, we transcend suffering. Conflict only chains us to the material world. Marlowe listens intently, but Renard, leaning back in his chair, raises an eyebrow. I get that, he says. But what do you do when someone else doesn't care about peace? What happens when someone attacks your people? Do you just sit back and let it happen? The monk pauses, reflecting on the question. We trust in the universe to restore balance. Violence, in the end, only breeds more violence. It is a cycle that must be broken. Renard looks unconvinced but doesn't press. I respect that, he says after a moment. But we humans, we don't just sit back. If someone threatens us, we fight back. We have to. We protect our own. The monk nods, beginning to see the core of what drives these humans. It's not just about survival, it's about standing together. The monk's own people had chosen to cast them aside to preserve their society's purity, but these humans, flawed as they might be, had done the opposite. They had reached out, even to a stranger, simply because it was the right thing to do. As the days stretch on, the conversations deepen. The monk begins to share more about their spiritual teachings, the importance of mindfulness, the idea that the universe has a plan for all beings, and that the highest form of existence is to live without attachment to the material. The humans listen, some fascinated, some skeptical, but all respectful. At one point, the ship's engineer, Isaac, pipes up. You know, I can see the appeal of all that peace and meditation, he says, wiping his hands on a rag. But honestly, if we humans didn't keep pushing, keep fighting against the odds, we wouldn't have made it this far. We're survivors. We don't give up, no matter how bad things get. The monk begins to understand something they had never considered before, that perhaps there is value in the human way of life, in their resilience. The humans' lives may be filled with struggle, but that struggle gives them purpose. They may not seek peace in the same way the monk's people do, but they find strength in each other, in their determination to protect those they care about. This realization begins to gnaw at the monk's thoughts. Reflecting on their exile, they start to wonder if the reasons for their abandonment were more complex than they first believed. The monk had always assumed their elders were protecting the order's spiritual purity. But what if there was something more? What if the elders had feared their growing influence, their teachings of questioning tradition? The humans encouraged the monk to dig deeper, to seek out the truth. You can't just accept what they told you, Renard says one evening, his tone firm. If there's more to the story, you need to find it. Don't let them silence you. The monk is conflicted. In their culture, obedience to the elders is sacred. Yet, the humans' words strike a chord. Their people had abandoned them without question, without mercy. Perhaps there had been fear behind that decision, fear of change, fear of challenge. Before the monk can consider this further, alarms blare across the ship. Renard is immediately at the helm, issuing commands as the crew scrambles to their stations. The ship has been intercepted. Through the view screen, a larger vessel appears, hovering ominously. The symbol on its hull is unmistakable. It's from an alien faction allied with the monk's order. A transmission crackles through the speakers, and a voice, cold and authoritative, demands the humans surrender the monk. The monk you carry is a traitor, the voice declares. Hand them over or suffer the consequences. The crew is tense, glancing at each other. Renard tightens his grip on the controls but doesn't flinch. We don't hand over people to those who abandon their own, he says firmly, refusing to back down. The monk, standing in the shadows of the command deck, watches silently. This is the moment. They could step forward, accept whatever fate awaits them, or they could trust these humans, these strangers who have shown more compassion in days than their own kind did in a lifetime. Renard glances back at the monk, his eyes steady. You with us? He asks. The monk's heart beats faster. They know what must be done. The alien ship looms closer, its weapons charging ominously. The cold voice from the transmission cuts through the tension once more, demanding the monk's surrender. But Captain Renard's decision has already been made. He stands firm, unshaken, as the crew prepares for battle. There's no hesitation, no second guessing. The humans have chosen to defend the monk, regardless of the cost. The monk, still in the shadows, feels a surge of fear and confusion. Their heart races, a deep unease rising within them. Violence is something they have always shunned, something they were taught to avoid at all costs. They step forward, their voice steady but pleading. This is not necessary. I cannot be the cause of this bloodshed. You don't need to fight for me. Renard turns, his eyes locking onto the monks. We're not fighting for you, he says, his voice calm but resolute. We're fighting with you. There's a difference. You're one of us now. We don't leave our own behind. The monk is stunned. There's a fierce loyalty in his words, something so deeply ingrained in these humans that it almost defies understanding. They've only known the monk for a short time, yet here they are, risking their lives to protect them. This is not the indifference the monk had encountered before, not the calculated coldness of other species. These humans fight not out of obligation, but out of choice. Before the monk can respond, the alien ship opens fire. The hull of the human ship shakes violently under the assault, but Renard remains focused. Shields up! Marlowe, I need damage reports. Isaac, get those engines ready for evasive maneuvers. The battle begins in earnest. The alien faction's ship is larger, more heavily armed, and clearly built for war. The humans, on the other hand, are outgunned, their smaller ship no match in a direct confrontation. But they have something else: ingenuity, determination, and an unrelenting will to survive. Isaac reroutes power to the shields while Marlowe scrambles to keep the systems online. Renard directs the ship through tight evasive maneuvers, dodging blasts, and weaving through the onslaught with precision. The humans may be outmatched in firepower, but they're not outmatched in resourcefulness. The monk watches in awe. Every instinct within them screams to stop the fighting, to find another way. But as the battle rages on, they begin to see the humans differently. This isn't senseless violence. This isn't aggression for the sake of power. This is defense, fierce, unyielding defense of a life they have chosen to protect. The monk had always believed that violence could never be justified, but witnessing the humans fight so bravely, not for glory or greed, but out of loyalty, shakes that belief to its core. The ship jolts again as another volley hits the shields. Marlowe calls out, her voice strained. We can't take much more of this, Captain. We need a plan! Renard doesn't flinch. I know. Isaac, divert all non-essential power to weapons. We're going to give them something to think about. Isaac grins despite the chaos. On it, Captain. The humans work in unison, their movements almost instinctive, each one trusting the other completely. There's no hesitation, no fear. They are, as always, ready to face whatever comes their way. The monk sees it now, the resilience that defines them, the refusal to give in, no matter the odds. The ship's weapons fire back, aimed with pinpoint precision at the weak points of the alien vessel. The human crew may not have the superior firepower, but they have tactics and experience on their side. Slowly, the tide of battle begins to shift. As the humans fight back, the monk grapples with their own internal conflict. For so long, they had believed that violence could never be the answer. But what they are seeing now challenges that belief. These humans are not fighting for domination. They are fighting for survival, for protection, for each other. The monk's understanding of what it means to fight begins to evolve. An explosion rocks the alien ship as the humans score a direct hit on its main weapon systems. The enemy vessel falters, its offensive capabilities severely diminished. The tide has turned, and the humans press their advantage, targeting the engines and other critical systems. The alien ship is crippled, no longer a threat. The battle is over, but the monk is left with a deep, unsettling feeling. They had always believed that peace was the only path forward, but now, seeing the humans risk everything for them, the monk can no longer see the world in such simple terms. Sometimes, fighting isn't about conquest or revenge, it's about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Renard, breathing heavily but unscathed, turns to the monk once the enemy ship is disabled. They won't be bothering us again, he says with a quiet confidence. But this isn't over. You need to confront your people. There's more to your exile than they told you, and you deserve to know the truth. The monk stands there, conflicted. The thought of facing their own kind, of standing up to the very order that had once guided their life, fills them with dread. But the humans, these strange and unpredictable beings, have shown them something new. They've shown the monk that sometimes, standing up is the only way forward. Marlowe steps forward, her voice softer. You're stronger than you think. You don't have to fight like we do, but you can't run from this. We'll be with you. You're not alone. The monk, still shaken by the battle, takes a deep breath. They can feel the weight of the choice before them. For the first time in their life, they must decide not just to survive, but to fight for the truth. The humans have shown them that even in the face of overwhelming odds, there is always a way forward. They nod, determination slowly building within them. You're right, the monk says. It's time to confront them. It's time to know why. Renard claps a hand on the monk's shoulder, a small gesture of solidarity. Then let's get to it. We've got your back. With that, the course is set. The monk, no longer alone, prepares to face their past with the strength they've gained from these humans. The truth awaits, and this time, the monk is ready. The ship glides silently through the cosmos, approaching the monk's homeworld, a planet known for its serene beauty, untouched by war or conflict. The monk stands by the viewing port, their gaze fixed on the familiar sight. It feels distant now, more a memory than a home. The humans stand with them, silent but present, ready to face whatever comes next. As they descend through the atmosphere, the monk feels a mixture of dread and resolve. It's not fear of confrontation, but rather a deep sadness at what they've learned. Their exile, once seen as divine will, is now exposed for what it truly was, a calculated move to silence dissent. The order, which had always preached peace and unity, was built on a foundation of control. The elders, those the monk had trusted most, feared the monk's growing influence. Their teachings had begun to challenge long-held traditions, and for that, they had been cast out. Upon landing, the humans remain by the monk's side as they enter the sacred halls of the order. The elders are waiting, their faces calm and composed, as if they already know what is about to unfold. The atmosphere is heavy with unspoken tension. The eldest among them speaks first, their voice measured and authoritative. You returned though you were exiled. This is not your place anymore. The monk steps forward, their heart steady. I return not to beg for forgiveness, but to seek the truth. You exiled me not because I violated sacred teachings, but because I dared to question them. I've seen through your lies. The elders exchange glances, their expressions betraying a flicker of unease. The humans stand just behind the monk, silent but ready. Renard's eyes are sharp, watching the interaction unfold. There's no turning back now. The elder's voice is colder this time, a sharp edge of authority cutting through the air. Your teachings threaten the unity of our order. You would have led others astray, away from the path of peace. We did what was necessary. The monk shakes their head, a weight lifting from their shoulders. You didn't banish me to protect peace. You banished me to protect your power. I was never a threat to our teachings, only to your control over them. The humans watch as the monk faces their past with a quiet strength. Marlowe steps forward, her voice calm but firm. This isn't about peace. You used that as an excuse to silence someone who wanted to bring growth and change. You feared their influence, not their beliefs. The elder's eyes narrow, but they remain silent, the weight of the truth hanging between them all. The monk, standing taller now, speaks with a clarity they hadn't felt in years. I've learned something from these humans. They taught me that true strength isn't found in rigid adherence to tradition. It's found in the ability to grow, to change, to fight for what's right, even when it's difficult. You've forgotten that. There's a long silence, and the elder's face remains impassive, but something has shifted. The other members of the order stand in quiet contemplation, their confidence visibly shaken. The truth, once hidden behind layers of doctrine and control, has been laid bare. The monk knows now that they cannot stay here. Even if they were welcomed back, the order is no longer where they belong. Their place is no longer among those who hide behind the guise of peace to maintain power. They turn to the humans, who have become more than just rescuers. They are allies, friends, kindred spirits. I won't return to this, the monk says softly, looking back at the elders one last time. I choose a new path, one where truth, not fear, guides my steps. Renard gives a small nod, and without another word, the monk and the humans turn to leave. The sacred halls feel smaller now, confined by the walls of a broken order, while outside, the universe stretches wide and full of possibility. The monk feels a sense of release, of freedom. Their exile, once a punishment, has become a blessing in disguise. As they board the ship and prepare for departure, the monk feels a quiet peace settle within them. It is not the peace of their old life, bound by rules and rituals, but a deeper, more profound understanding. They have seen the strength of humanity, their resilience, their willingness to fight for each other, and their refusal to abandon those in need. It is a strength that transcends the boundaries of species, a strength the monk now carries within themselves. In the quiet hum of the ship's engine, the monk reflects on the journey that brought them here. Once, they believed that their fate was sealed, that they had been abandoned by all. But it was the humans who showed them that fate is not something to be accepted passively. It is something to be shaped, fought for, and embraced. They look out at the stars, feeling a sense of belonging they hadn't felt in a long time. Not to any planet or order, but to something larger, something that connects all beings who choose to stand together in the face of adversity. I never thought I'd find a place out here, the monk says softly, more to themselves than to anyone else. Renard, standing beside them, offers a small smile. You're part of the crew now. Wherever we go, you go. The monk nods, the weight of their past finally lifting. They know now that they've chosen the right path, not the one their elders laid out for them, but the one they've forged for themselves. A path of truth, of growth, and of new beginnings. As the ship drifts into the endless expanse of space, the monk feels a quiet resolve settle within them. They are no longer the outcasts, no longer the abandoned. They are part of something greater now, with allies who value truth, resilience, and the courage to stand against the odds. And with that, the monk faces the future, no longer afraid.